The sound that stopped the classroom was not a scream, not even a shout, but the sharp tearing of fabric in broad daylight, a violent rip that echoed between whiteboards and windows as sunlight poured in. The new teacher stood frozen at the front of the room, her shirt torn open at the shoulder, papers fluttering to the floor like startled birds, while two students laughed and another filmed on a phone, certain that power belonged to them. In that single breathless moment, the room believed she would break. They were wrong. Before this story continues, take a moment and ask yourself something simple but powerful. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what is right even when it costs you, please like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Acts of Kindness. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Mireia Solis, and she had arrived at Oak Ridge High School just 3 weeks earlier, carrying a canvas tote bag filled with color-coded lesson plans, handwritten notes, and quiet hope. She was 32, newly certified, and teaching social studies after years of night classes and substitute work. The school itself sat in the middle of a working-class district surrounded by chain-link fences, cracked sidewalks, and the low hum of traffic that never truly slept. Oak Ridge had a reputation whispered among educators as a place where idealism went to die. Mireia knew that when she accepted the job, but she also knew something else about herself that she rarely spoke about. She believed deeply that respect could be taught, not demanded. From her first day, the challenge had been clear. Her third-period class was known as unmanageable. Students came and went as they pleased. Chairs scraped loudly across the floor, and laughter cut through lessons like thrown stones. The ringleaders were easy to spot, even from the hallway. There was Carson Hale, tall, bored, with a permanent smirk that said nothing mattered. Beside him sat Jet Monroe, all restless energy and cruel jokes, and behind them, always recording, was Nolan Price, who believed humiliation was entertainment. They tested every teacher, and most failed quickly, either by exploding in anger or retreating into silence. Mireia tried something different. She learned names, asked about interests, connected history lessons to their lives. She stood straight, spoke calmly, and refused to be intimidated by noise. But kindness, when mistaken for weakness, can become a target. Whispers followed her through the halls. Students joked about her soft voice and second-hand clothes. A rumor spread that she cried in the staff bathroom. None of it was true, but truth mattered little in a place fueled by cruelty. What no one knew was that Mireia had spent her childhood in a very different kind of classroom. She had grown up in a small apartment above her mother's cleaning business, where afternoons were filled not with television, but with discipline. At 9 years old, she had been enrolled in a local Judo dojo after being pushed around at school. There, under fluorescent lights and worn mats, she learned balance, leverage, and restraint. Judo was never about hurting others. It was about redirecting force, about staying calm when chaos rushed toward you. She earned her black belt at 18, then tucked that part of herself away as life moved on. Teaching, she believed, required patience, not strength. The incident happened on a Tuesday morning, sunlight bright and unforgiving. The lesson was about civil rights movements, about dignity and resistance, themes that hovered ironically in the air. Mireia was writing on the board when she felt a sudden tug at her shoulder, sharp and aggressive. Before she could turn, the fabric of her shirt tore, exposing skin and shock. Laughter erupted. Phones came up. For a fraction of a second, her heart slammed against her ribs, and the room seemed to tilt. This was the moment every fear converged. The fear of not being respected. The fear of being humiliated. The fear of becoming another teacher who quit mid-year, broken and blamed. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, but from adrenaline. She could hear blood rushing in her ears. The boys stood too close, invading her space, feeding off the power of the crowd. And then something ancient and steady rose within her, something learned long ago on padded floors. Mireia did not shout. She did not run. She did not cry. She shifted her stance slightly, grounding herself. When Carson lunged again, laughing, she moved with precision, redirecting his momentum, her body remembering what her mind barely had time to register. In one smooth motion, she executed a controlled judo throw, using leverage rather than force. Carson hit the floor hard, the sound a dull thud that erased laughter instantly. Jet stumbled back in shock, tripping over a chair and falling beside him. The phones dropped. Silence flooded the room. Mireya stood breathing heavily, her torn shirt forgotten, eyes steady, posture unbroken. She had not struck anyone. She had not lost control. She had simply defended herself. The class stared as if witnessing something impossible. The power dynamic shattered in seconds. Nolan froze mid-recording, pale and unsure. The bell rang somewhere far away, but no one moved. Administrators arrived quickly, alerted by a panicked call from a neighboring teacher. Mireya was escorted out, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, her face calm but her hands still shaking. In the office, she finally allowed herself to sit, the weight of what had happened pressing down on her chest. She knew how this usually ended. Teachers were expected to endure. Self-defense, no matter how justified, was often punished. The hours that followed felt endless. Parents were called, statements were taken, security footage was reviewed. Carson's parents arrived furious, demanding Mireya be fired immediately. She listened quietly as accusations filled the room, as words like dangerous and unstable were thrown at her. She wondered if she should have just let it happen, if standing up for herself had cost her everything she worked for. But something unexpected happened when the footage played. The room watched the screen as the context became undeniable. The harassment, the assault, the tear of fabric, and then the restraint. The administrators saw what the students had not expected anyone to see. A teacher who had been pushed too far and responded with control, not rage. By the end of the day, Carson and Jet were suspended pending further disciplinary action. Nolan was ordered to delete the video and faced consequences for recording. Mireya was placed on temporary leave, not as punishment but protocol. She went home exhausted, sitting on her couch in the fading afternoon light, wondering if she would ever return to that classroom. News traveled fast. Students talked, parents whispered. Some teachers avoided her, others quietly left notes of support in her mailbox. Then, 2 days later, something shifted. A letter arrived from a group of students in her class. Handwritten, uneven, sincere. They wrote about how scared they had been, how wrong it felt to watch someone be humiliated, how seeing her stand up for herself changed something inside them. One line stayed with her longer than the rest. It said they finally understood what dignity looked like. When Mireya returned to Oak Ridge the following week, the building felt different. The hallway noise softened as she passed. Eyes followed her, not with mockery, but with curiosity and something close to respect. In her third period class, the desks were straight. The room was quiet. The students looked at her, waiting. She adjusted her jacket, took a breath, and began teaching again, her voice steady, sunlight still streaming through the windows. She did not become feared. She became trusted. Students who had never listened before began to engage. Discipline issues dropped. The story of the judo throw spread. But what lasted was not the spectacle. It was the boundary she set, the message that kindness did not mean surrender, that respect was mutual. If this story is touching you right now, if you feel that tightness in your chest or that quiet sense of justice being restored, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in standing up for what is right, and subscribe to Acts of Kindness. Your engagement helps these stories reach hearts that need them. Months later, on a bright afternoon, Mireya watched her students present projects on leaders who changed the world without violence. She saw confidence where there had once been chaos. She saw growth. She saw proof that moments of courage could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. Before this story ends, we have a special request. Please comment below with the words, "Strength with kindness," if you believe that standing up for yourself and treating others with humanity can coexist. Mireya never tore another shirt. She never had to. The lesson had been learned. not through fear, but through example. And in a classroom filled with daylight, something rare had taken root: respect.